Welcome to another episode of Conscious Business Connections, brought to you by the New York City chapter of Conscious Capitalism. My name is Bob Caporale, and I'm joined today by Daniel Zimmon of NatScent, located here in New York City. Daniel, welcome to the show.
Thanks. Hi, Bob.
How are you doing today?
Fantastic. Thank you. How are
Awesome,
you?
awesome. Well, Daniel, as you know, conscious capitalism is a philosophy that's dedicated to the thought that capitalism can actually be a good thing if businesses practice it in a conscious way. And so we embrace this philosophy in a number of different ways. Companies can embrace these things both internally and externally, focusing either on their purpose or things like their stakeholders, their culture, their leadership, and so forth. So what we do on this show is highlight companies in the local New York City area that are practicing some of these things so that other companies can learn from them and be inspired from them and share their stories. So with all of that said, tell us a little bit about NatScent, what the company is, what it does, and what the backstory is a little bit.
Oh, I'd love to. Thanks for having me today.
Of
I'm
course.
excited. I've been really grateful to be part of Conscious Capitalism in New York City. So NatScent is a company, our company, that helps people pay attention to and manage the olfactory experiences that happen in their company or even in their home,
Yeah.
and that they experience. So what we do is called environmental scenting. And that means we manage the fragrance and the scent profile of the external environment to the benefit of the people within it and to influence them in a positive way. So,
Got it.
yeah, that's what NatScent does.
That is so cool. Now, I could imagine this would have a lot of different applications. Are you focused mostly on the business environment, or like, tell me a little bit about your typical customers?
We are focused mostly on the business environment, and during the pandemic, we've gotten more and more focused on the healthcare environment. Um,
Oh,
yeah, scent management and paying attention to scent has traditionally been aimed in the luxury market or been accepted and used in the luxury market, and that's how I got exposed to it. Um, but our value proposition really is to help companies and to work on the opportunity of paying attention to it for all different levels of companies that serve people in different ways. Health is one way where everyone's familiar with aromatherapy
yeah.
or familiar with essential oil use. But most people don't think about it in terms of how meaningful our experience in a space is with regard to our how we feel about the other people that are there and the company that we're working with, and how those people internally feel about each other. So scent is really cool in a bunch of different ways, and I can tell you how I got attracted to it. If I could probably keep it pretty short if you want to hear it.
Yeah, of course we do. We do. But before we get there, I just want to ask a question just for clarification. When you talk about the luxury space, right? I'm picturing consumer retail space. Is that what you're referring to? Like, luxury brands, luxury stores that you go into and they have scent going in there. You might not even know that they have scent going in. Is that what you're referring to? Or are you talking about the back office environment?
Well, a little bit of both. Actually, yeah, traditionally consumer retail, luxury retail. The luxury brands are the ones that have in the past paid attention to it and used it as part of their brand.
Got it.
Hospitality, especially, right?
Okay.
Scent's been shown to have a very, very strong impact on how we feel about the quality and value perception. It does that because it's our most basic self-defense mechanism. Scent was biologically designed inside of us to protect us from dangers, whether it's food, whether it's tigers and lions and bears,
Hmm. Interesting.
or just a life environment. And that's why our scent system is directly connected to our emotional system, our limbic system. It's connected to that part of our brain, the amygdala, rather than the way our other senses are connected, which is they go through our cognitive center first. Our brain thinks
Oh.
about it and figures it out, and then we make a determination. Well, our olfactory system doesn't work that way. It's working all the time, and it was designed that way biologically to protect us from, hey, if you smell a bear, you
Don't
better
go near
notice
there. Yeah.
you better notice it immediately. Or food and taste is 80% smell. Well, the reason it is to protect you from eating things that are going to poison you before you eat them.
Interesting. So this is a raw emotional reaction that companies can get right away in whatever application they want to use it in.
It creates a connection, yeah, and it's an instantaneous, unfiltered, can't turn it off connection. The
Got it.
really cool thing about scent, and the reason I got excited about it and started this company, is because people think of it as in, hey, this smell makes me feel this way, that smell makes me feel this way. I'm going to influence and manipulate people with it.
Mm.
Well, kinda, but what's really happening is scents are individual to your experience and what you've experienced being when you're linked to them.
Mm.
That's why babies, if their mothers eat a lot of certain foods when they're pregnant, babies have reactions to those foods. They've already experienced them.
Mm.
So the reason I got attracted to it is the value of emotions and the energy that people bring to each other in business, in my business experience, has actually been the most valuable, the most differentiating, the best opportunity businesses have. It's cultural, and conscious capitalism is about the culture that we create, how we influence the outside world, how we feel about the world, and what our intentions are,
Yeah.
and the value that that creates. And
Incredible. So I want to make sure that I get to this part too, because I think this is a really interesting road that you're going down. It sounds like you're saying that scent is not just like it, we. How do I say this? If we smell something that we perceive as pleasant, it's because we have pleasant memories associated with that or pleasant images associated with that. But if we have negative images associated with that exact same scent, then that scent becomes negative to us. Is that kind of the idea?
that's exactly correct. That's exactly how it works. Gasoline is a great example. Lots of people, basically, the smell of gasoline is negative. It's poisonous. When you breathe it, it makes you sick.
Yeah.
Um, but if you're imprinted with like positive gasoline smell, like, wow, when I was little, I went to the gas station with my dad and I wiped the window, and or my mom let me fill up the car, and lots of people have a positive
I'm
feeling when
one
they
of
smell
those, in
gas.
fact, and I shouldn't, right? Because you're not supposed to drink it, right? I'm
There,
like,
there, there's
is
no
it?
should though.
Yeah,
There's no should. It's opportunity, right? And that's why luxury brands use it. When you have a great experience at Ritz Carlton, just one of them, every time you walk into a Ritz Carlton, and even if the smell is imperceptibly low, when you smell it, you relive that experience. So if you're a great healthcare organization that think of how important culture is in healthcare. People can't really judge the care they're going to get. They kind of find out after the fact.
Yeah,
But the culture, how people meet you, how they greet you, how much they care for you, that has a tremendous impact on your care. And healthcare companies work incredibly hard on that because it matters. It's even been shown to affect your healing. How
yeah.
you feel
So
about the people in the office, how you feel about your physicians or your doc, it really matters. Just like when you go, so being able to imprint that with a scent is what's so
is what's
exciting.
so cool.
And
And so this is interesting because when I originally saw the company, you automatically think that like, oh, what you're trying to do is create a positive experience through scent. But what I'm really hearing is that you're actually holding companies accountable to their experiences through scent, right? Because once they get a scent imprinted, if they deliver a bad experience and that scent is associated with the bad experience, and that's a negative thing. So if I'm investing in a scent, I would think that along with that, I need to provide a positive experience for that package to work. Is that kind of the idea?
it actually works that way. Companies holding themselves accountable. We're working with some companies, particularly law firms, that actually use it as a cultural placeholder internally.
Mm.
If you put a poster on the wall that says, hey, well, I'm going to use exactly what we're doing with them. The emotions we bring to each other and to our clients are part of our value proposition. They
Wow.
affect how effective we are. They affect how well we work. They affect how people receive us. They affect the results of our work. If you put a poster on the wall, you'll notice it for a while. Think of a safety poster. You'll see it occasionally. But if you imprint that culture and say, look, we're creating a company scent logo, and it's about this. It means this. It means we care about the emotions we bring to each other. It means this is part of our value proposition and other parts of your value proposition too. Well, every time you experience that, when you walk into the space, whether you realize it or not, your emotional system registers it. And
Yeah.
there's nothing else like that, because of that alternate pathway that scent takes into your brain.
It's so incredible. And just in talking to you, I was like thinking about my own life experiences. Like another example I could think of is school. Like school
Yeah.
has a smell to me, right? And I remember, when I went to school for the very first time, I was a socially awkward, like moment for me. I was very, very scared to leave the nest, so to speak. And even though it wasn't an unpleasant smell, I'm sure, when I smell that school smell, like I go to my daughter's school and I smell it, I'm like, oh no,
Oh, the school has the same smell?
yeah, it's got like yeah, I can't describe it exactly. It must be, I don't know if it's something that they clean the school with it, but it's certainly not an unpleasant smell. You wouldn't say it's a dangerous smell, but to me, it brings back unpleasant, kind of feelings. And so that's kind of an interesting kind of thought. So same thing in a company. Now, when you talk about scent logos, you called it,
Yeah.
is it that you're creating unique and specific scent? It's not just like, fill the air with apple scent or something like that. This is a unique scent. Like, tell us about that process a little bit.
Yeah, that's a great question, and that's how companies, that's how we use it, and that's how companies get the most out of it, make it the most meaningful. Although they can use a stock scent,
Hmm.
and even though the stock scent is, used by other companies in certain things, there can be some companies do that intentionally. Um,
Mm,
think of the smell of an Apple store, which is hard to create because Apple is very, very careful about it. Just like in their products, why should their products smell like? I mean, my perception is aluminum and like kind of light wood and metal and glass. Those
yeah.
things don't really have smells. I mean, you smell glass, but that's how you feel about you don't smell glass, right? Glass doesn't
You
smell.
don't smell glass, but there's
Yeah,
something
but it feels like that.
right. It feels there's something very
Because it's
psychological here.
consistent.
Yeah,
One thing I really want to go back to is the school, because
yeah,
I share that experience so much.
yeah.
So can you think of the smell of juniper?
I probably, yeah, I think
There
so.
were juniper bushes all around my elementary school.
Oh,
And I didn't have a negative experience, but yeah, I was fearful when I first went to kindergarten, and it smelled so much of juniper, and it's not a bad smell at all. But when I
it's a
walk by
beautiful
one of
smell,
those,
right? Yeah,
yeah, I guess not to me,
yeah. You wouldn't
because
know.
when I walk by one of those bushes anywhere, I feel like I'm back in kindergarten.
And that's exactly it, right? And then just to continue on that, later in my elementaries, I had a good experience, right? Because it was only that initial like entering school for the first time. There's that smell.
Me too.
But the
Mhm.
same thing for me is like my schoolyard
Mix.
was surrounded by honeysuckle, and
Oh,
and that was a good experience for me. And to this day, I love the smell of honeysuckle. Now, of course, that probably wouldn't be too odd to love the smell of honeysuckle, but it's not because of the smell; it's because of the memory I associate it with. So, it is really,
yeah.
this is such a fascinating discussion. It really is. But now, so back to the scent logo. So there are specific scents that companies can have branded as their own, or they can use some off the shelf things depending on what they want to be associated with. So they can kind of almost steal someone else's association a little bit, and then
Well,
use
that
it also to create their own, right?
yeah, well, that matters too, right? And it's cultural. So different cultures have different experiences. We only are currently working in the United States, so it's relatively simple. But yeah, if your scent that you end up using is the same as the luxury lounge for American Airlines,
Yeah.
you're gonna share that impression. That's why we usually, even if a company really likes a particular scent, we'll work with the perfumer and change it a little bit and make it unique. And
Make it a little
people,
bit their own.
yeah, and people's olfactory system can discern literally millions of scents and is incredibly sensitive. So your brain knows the difference, even though you might not.
Which kind of also
That
brings
sounds
me
kind of
to
funky.
another question, which is that is this an overt scent? In other words, is like obvious, or are you just kind of pumping in subtle scents or subliminal scents almost?
People use them both ways.
They do.
Yeah, I mean, most people are familiar with like Abercrombie and Finch, the way they blitzkrieg you and you can smell it from 3 blocks away.
Yeah.
Doesn't appeal to people my age really, but
Right.
it's been really successful for them and you kind of can't miss it. I have some retail clients who are, that's called billboarding, who are absolutely like blasting the place.
Yeah.
And it's been really, really successful for them. It's not my inclination. Most of our clients are doing it from the other direction, which is gentle,
Yeah.
sometimes imperceptible, but it is your brain does perceive it anyway. The science says, they used to say your brain can discern fragrances down to 1 part per million. Now they say down to a part per billion.
Wow.
That's how sensitive your olfactory system is, even though you don't really know. You know, it's kind of like the car companies are a good example. You get a funny feeling, right? People get very, very accustomed and have very high brand loyalties to cars.
Yeah.
And when you look at it, it's really about the scent. Audi has an entire department of people that literally smell every piece and grade every piece that goes into the car. You see the guys in the white
No
coats holding
kidding.
the steering wheel, like
Is
smelling the steering
That's
wheel. Well, it
amazing.
it matters because they, you know, once you get accustomed to a particular smell, that's what you identify with the experience. And when you're in a different smell, and this is why it's so important competitively, you won't feel right. That's
Yeah.
why luxury airlines started doing it. It started with the long haul Middle Eastern luxury airlines like Etihad, and the Pacific ones, Cathay and ANA, and they would scent the pillows and scent the. People started to realize that if you flew most of the time on Cathay, when you got on ANA, it didn't matter how great it was, it didn't feel right.
Didn't feel That's amazing.
You don't feel comfortable. It's like you walk into your house and it doesn't smell right. It smells
Yeah.
like somebody else's house. You're not home.
That's exact, man. That's so amazing. Now, bringing it back to conscious capitalism for a minute, like when you're working in the back office environment, which is really interesting to me, right? Because that really speaks to
Mm.
creating a culture that you believe in so much and are willing to be held accountable to, that you're going to
Yeah.
imprint a sense to it, right?
Right. You're going to
Um,
leverage that accountability is what happens.
yeah, and that to me is amazing. Now, when you work with companies in that back office environment, do these conversations come up? Like, do companies approach you because they know that, or do you have those conversations and say, look, it's very important that your culture is going to be a good culture that people are going to associate with this? How does that conversation go?
That's such a good question, Bob. You know, it usually starts with the basic stuff. Like the basics of scent is, if it's a positive scent, people spend more time, spend more money, feel better about what they spend money on. That's basic, right? If you walk into a place and it smells like Febreze, or which is people, it's a good smell, but your brain really thinks something's not right here,
Mm,
right?
yeah,
So when something
cover
has
up.
a, yeah, it's a cover up. So when people have a positive experience, they feel better. If you walked into a luxury leather store like a Salvatore Ferragamo and it smelled like plastic, you wouldn't buy too many $400 pairs of shoes. I wouldn't buy them anyway, but
Right, right.
um, it just doesn't work. It's a violation of what, your senses. So it usually starts with the basics, and then it moves on to the memory, the importance of scent in memory, which is tremendously powerful.
Yeah.
They say that either between 80 and 100% of memories have a scent component.
Mm, unbelievable.
So, I mean, branding, your appearance, what it's like in your company, including is the same way for the people inside and outside, right?
Yeah.
And the feeling and the reason it aligns so much with conscious companies, honestly, after you start with the basic idea of, hey, scent has influence. Well, the really powerful influence is the experience and the energy behind the people that you get that experience with. If I'll use Ritz Carlton again. If the Ritz Carlton Hotel was beautiful, but the people were nasty, and you went to the front desk and they, criticized you or weren't positive or weren't helpful, you'd have a very bad experience, even though it was a beautiful luxury place, and you'd probably never go back.
Yeah, and now you're associating that with whatever scent they've pumped into the environment. So again, when you're talking to companies, do you almost have like a blueprint for this for companies to say, hey, we're going to give you the scent logo, but you have to make sure that your culture is, are these conversations that are had?
Yeah.
Yeah.
I guess the answer to that is usually companies that aren't really caring about the culture or the experience inside and their experience outside are not too open to the idea of
Oh, right. Because
managing scent.
it's a cost, right? So I guess companies
Mhm.
are approaching you because they want to create a good environment. So it's almost like a good match right from the start.
Exactly. It's companies that care about experience. And
Yeah.
it's even better and even more fitting for companies that are conscious, that care about how they influence the world, how they influence people within the company, how they influence their clients, and how they connect with them. The idea of amplifying really some of the values of conscious capitalism, which are that energy, that stakeholder balance is one of the is probably the most valuable thing about what you're doing.
Right.
And our experience is it is, right?
Yeah.
When you have, that's how I started the company. I was in the construction business, and I was fortunate enough to work with some people that coached us and coached me and helped us emphasize the emotions we brought to each other and the outside world and our value proposition in terms of balance. And that was like, the company grew enormously.
Because
People,
of that kind of coaching, paying
yeah, and
attention to your culture, paying attention to the stakeholders. Incredible. And then now that had nothing to do with scent, of course, at the time, right? That was just
no,
you
we
embracing
didn't,
the principles
yeah,
of conscious capitalism. Yeah.
we didn't use scent at all. And so when I got involved with a company that was using scent from overseas that was looking to expand here, and I started finding out about it, the thing that really got me was the leverage,
Yeah.
the bang for the buck. I mean, the cost of a scent program and paying attention to scent and managing it is so tiny compared to the influence and the opportunity that I
Yeah.
got really excited about it. I'm like, wow, I could help other companies outside of luxury, and it's turned out some in luxury too,
Yeah.
but help them make such a difference, amplify what they do and how they do it for so little money, have such a great ROI, that I
Yeah.
got really excited about it. I mean, when you do construction, yeah, the increment between your company that's great and maybe someone else's company that's not so great, they're like, well, how much Tylenol does that buy? Or
Right.
the
Right. Yeah.
value difference is there. I mean, the value of working, the influence through your organization of working with positive people versus people that are less conscious, it's there, but it's incremental.
Yeah.
But in scent, I mean, we're spending, companies like distributed companies that we're working with are spending a monthly on their scent, less than they spend on paper towels, and it has a profound impact on how they interact with other people and what the experience is there. So
That's so
that's how I
cool.
got excited about it.
Yeah, that's really neat, and I'm glad you came back to that. At the end of the day, you take this great coaching experience in an industry that probably isn't. Maybe I shouldn't say this, but it doesn't sound like it's an industry that does a lot of that, right? Or what? I don't know.
Well, it's an industry that's very focused on fear, perfectionism.
Mm,
So there's lots of opportunities in the industry to recognize that there are other values. But yeah, in general, it's not an industry that is focused on. I think the best companies are. I think the best companies are focused on being
yeah, that's
conscious.
why I
But
say I shouldn't, but I guess it's more like that's not an industry that you typically associate with that kind of coaching. But it sounds like in your case, your company embraced that. It made an incredible difference, and then that brought you into this new world to say, hey, how I could do more of that and help companies in a different way. So it's just such a cool story and such a cool topic too. I mean, it's one that we, I guess, by human design don't think about a lot, right? But if
exactly.
we do pay attention to it, it's really, really powerful. So what a great story, Daniel, and really, really appreciate you sharing it. I don't want to let you leave without giving people a chance to find out more about your company and what you do. So where can they go to learn more about what NatScent can provide?
Oh, they can find us on LinkedIn or go to natscent.com and reach out to me directly. I mean, it's exciting, and I'm excited to talk about the conscious part and the way you brought up the how do companies get to that piece, that cultural piece. That's perfect because it takes some work to get to that sometimes.
Yeah.
And
Yeah.
people think of it as just direct. They usually, if they're open to it, they're usually like, yeah, I get how that matters. But the memory piece and the logo and the imprint part, and carrying that culture internally and externally, that usually takes people a while to get. So I like to talk to them about their culture and how it works and how it fits, and it's been brilliant.
That's so awesome. Well, good. I hope people will take advantage of that. We're going to leave the links in the description on the video, and make sure that people can get in touch with you in a very easy way. So, listen, thank you so much again. It was really great to have you on the show, and I want to make sure I thank everyone in the audience as well. Thank you. If you liked what you saw, you learned something, please give us a thumbs up. Please subscribe to the channel, and also, please share the video with your friends. And if you're interested on being on the show, you have a conscious business in the New York City area, greater New York City area, please hit us up as well. The links are all in the description. So please make sure you get in touch with us and see if you might want to be a guest on Conscious Business Connections. We also don't want to leave without thanking the sponsors of the chapter, which are the Core Club and the Tomiak Foundation. Without their support, shows like this would not be possible. So we thank them. And of course, we thank you. So we hope to see you back here on another episode. And Daniel, thank you again. We'll see you hopefully in some of our events.
Yes, thank you so much for having me, and thanks for your great questions.
You bet. It was a pleasure. All right, everyone. Well, thanks so much. And we'll see you back here on another episode of Conscious Business Connections. Thanks.